Right.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Consular Conversations Live. We are going to speak to you today about American Citizen Services with a special focus on the Federal Voting Assistance Program. Joining me here today is Bill Torrance, who's the ACS chief here at the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. But before we begin, I just want to make sure that you're aware that you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at US Embassy JA. You can also visit the U.S. Embassy's website at jm.usembassy.gov. Today, we're focusing on American Citizen Services, but next month, March 20th at the regular time at 1 p.m. local, we will be focusing on J1 exchange visitors. So if you are interested in the J1 program, make sure that you tune in next March 20th at 1 p.m. local time. And without further ado, Bill, welcome.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me once again, and it's a pleasure to be here talking to all of our American and Jamaican friends tuning in Jamaica or wherever they are around the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to have you here again. So, Bill, it's my understanding that appointment times have gone down drastically for American Citizen Services. What is the wait time for passport applications right now?
It's true. We finally burned down a lot of the wait time that we were seeing from the COVID pandemic and the related stoppages in our ability to process our normal cases. Now we're down to less than 30 days for all the services we provide, be it renewal of passports for adults, new passports for first-time applicants and for minors, as well as registration of birth for children born here in Jamaica to U.S. citizen parents, and notarial services as well.
So for notarials, can applicants come in any day to get a notary?
No, so we've changed the way that we're doing things to make things a little bit more efficient and get all of our applicants in and out of our office quickly so they can move on with their day. So nowadays we're only offering regular notarials on Thursdays. If there's any sort of emergency, people can always write to us at kingstonacs@state.gov to ask for any sort of emergency accommodation if needed.
That makes sense. And I've been witness myself to much quicker processing times as a result of dedicated notary services days. So if you have something urgent coming up, whether you're going to close on a home sale, or you know that you need to give consent to an estate sale, please try to plan it in advance. Really, the wait times are de minimis at this point. It's a week or less in order to schedule a notary appointment. You just want to make sure that if you're coming in on a Thursday, that you have sufficient time before those documents need to be sent wherever they may need to go. Most of our customers need to send those onwards to the United States. So please keep that timing in mind, that if you come in and get the documents notarized on a Thursday, how much time you have remaining before those documents are due. Now, Bill, you mentioned Consular Report of Birth Abroad. What is that? Is that every U.S. citizen gets that? Who qualifies for that service?
It's a very special subsection of U.S. citizens, those U.S. citizens that are born outside of the territory of the United States to one or both parents who are also U.S. citizens. My own son, for example, born in Colombia, but born a United States citizen and certified through the Consular Report of Birth Abroad process. The one thing that we're really excited about when it comes to consular reports of birth abroad is we've shifted to an electronic application process, makes things move quicker, still protects the private information of the applicants, and allows us to provide that service much faster than in the past. So visit the embassy's website and follow our navigator to the Consular Report of Birth Abroad instructions and get started on registering the birth of your U.S. citizen child.
Okay, and that really sounds like it's a much easier process. My understanding is it's much more self-service. You're responsible for uploading the documents that support the application. There's a much more automated back and forth communication process, so it's not as manual. And my understanding is that all communication should go through the e-CRIBA or electronic consular report of birth abroad system rather than through email. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This is going to take care of a lot of the back and forth writing of emails, or instead going to go through this new system. And the nice thing about it is it lays out all the instructions you need to follow, and you'll know when you've met all the requirements, because you'll finally, at the end of the process, once you've gotten that application filled out correctly, that's when we tell you when your interview time will be.
So I just want to give a little bit of emphasis here. Let's say that you have an American citizen spouse and they're filing for an immigrant visa petition for you, but your child was born to that US citizen. That child should not be traveling to the United States on a visa. If that child has a valid claim to US citizenship, in fact, they are ineligible to receive a visa to travel to the US if they were born and eligible to be a US citizen. So make sure that you check if your child is eligible for a consular report of birth abroad and file to make an appointment. All of the information that you need to complete the process is available online. Again, jm.usembassy.gov. And if you go under the subsection for US Citizen Services, you'll find the information there. You can, of course, always utilize a lawyer if you believe it's necessary, but the whole process is designed so that any applicant should be able to complete this process on their own. Of course, there will need to be cooperation generally from the US citizen parent. There are exceptions, of course, where a US citizen parent may have passed away or may otherwise be inaccessible. But oftentimes, this is a process that involves a lot of supplementary documentation, mainly to confirm a minimum amount of physical presence in the United States before the child was born. So make sure that you make an earnest effort to collect this documentation. And it can vary from pay stubs to lease documentation to bank statements that just ascertain that the US citizen parent was present in the US for the minimum amount of time necessary. And then once you have that all submitted in the e-CRIBA portal, then when you come in for that interview for your child, things will be much more smooth and seamless, and it'll really be a breeze getting through the interview with the consular officer. Now, some people come in and they think that all they need to do is apply for a passport for their child if one of the parents was a US citizen. That is not the case, correct, if the child was born abroad?
Right. We need some sort of what we call documentary proof that the child is a US citizen before we can proceed with the issuance of the passport, which is their proof of both identity and their citizenship. But we need to establish that they're a citizen first by going through that consular report of birth abroad process.
So it's almost like the equivalent to a birth certificate for US citizen children born abroad.
You nailed it.
Okay. But just as you cannot really travel on a birth certificate, you can't travel on a CRIBA document.
Right. CRIBA documents don't have any proof of identification. They don't have a picture of the applicant or any other of the identifying information that goes into the passport, for example.
That makes sense. And thank you very much, Bill. I want to now move forward to talk about some headlines on the immigrant visa and non-immigrant visa side before we turn things to our main topic today, which is the federal voting assistance program. So I just want to point out that if you are an immigrant visa applicant, you need to make an appointment with the panel physician for your medical exam. You must use Andrews Memorial Hospital in Kingston and visit their website to make an appointment. Please note that the COVID vaccine is now available on island, and you most likely need to get the booster if you've already received the first couple of doses. There are other required vaccines, so you want to check that before you come in for your immigrant visa interview. please try to get all the required vaccines before you visit the panel physician. And this is really an important step because sometimes with the appointment times at Andrews Memorial, you might not be able to get an appointment on the timeline that you need after you've already had your immigrant visa interview. So you really want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that after your interview with the consular officer, all that's left is the printing of that visa and for you to make all of the travel arrangements necessary for you to immigrate to the US in the timeline explained to you during your immigrant visa interview. And finally, for non-immigrant visa applicants, we really want to highlight that appointment times are drastically down. They're no longer the long wait times that people heard about during COVID times. Appointments are now available within 30 days for regular B1, B2 visa interviews, appointments. However, if you have plans travel coming up, make sure that you don't book the travel until you actually have an approved visa. Make sure that you don't book the appointment days before you're supposed to be in the United States, because there's no guarantee that visa will be approved or printed on time for your travel. So really make sure that you check the dates of any planned travel coming up and that you go onto the U.S. Embassy's website to make a non-immigrant visa appointment. We'll be happy to see you in short order and to facilitate all legitimate travel to the United States. For any questions, you can always call the non-immigrant visa call center at 876-656-8535. Again, that's 876-656-8535, or visit ais.usvisa-info.com. So now we're going to move forward with talking with the Federal Voting Assistance Program. Bill, that's a bit of a mouthful. Could you explain it to me, please?
Absolutely. And we're really excited. In the United States, the news is already almost 24/7 about the upcoming 2024 elections. And it's something that I'm always enthusiastic about, having voted both at home and overseas in 3 different countries now. Federal Voting Assistance Program, we also refer to it by its acronym FVAP, is the way that American citizens can register for primary or general elections in their state of residence back home in the United States. It really is a complicated system to think about. All 50 states and the US territories, the District of Columbia, each of them have a different set of rules, regulations, and laws pertaining to who can register to vote, what documents you need to provide to them, and how often you need to renew your registration to be able to continue voting in future elections. So the Federal Voting Assistance Program was designed and built to make sure you get the information you need for your particular voting situation in your home state of record. If all else fails and you realize that the time is late and we're coming up on November 5th and you haven't requested or received your ballot from your home state, the Federal Voting Assistance Program also has an emergency postcard ballot, which will allow you to at least place your vote for the federal offices that are up for election in your state of residence.
That makes sense. And how can people know the different registration deadlines for each state?
Well, I tried to memorize all 50 states' deadlines in preparation for this interview, but unfortunately I forgot. So what you need to do is go to fvap.gov. Once again, that's the Federal Voting Assistance Program, fvap.gov. And right there on their homepage, the first thing they're going to ask you for is, what is your state of residence? Putting that information in will give you a table of all of the deadlines for all the various elections. If your state still has a primary election to pick the candidate for president for your party of choice, you can go ahead and register for that if there's still time. And it'll also give you the deadlines for when to request the actual general election ballot for your state. Depending on the state of your residence, you might be able to vote for not only the federal offices, but your state and local elections as well. So it's always best to request your state's ballot through FVAP and not wait for that postcard emergency option that comes last.
what if I've been living in Jamaica for quite some time, and it's been years since I lived in the U.S. I might have family in Louisiana, but I most recently lived in New York. So, which state would I register to vote in?
So you need to check your state's regulations for the state that you most recently lived in. That's almost always going to be the right choice. But once again, 50 states, and I couldn't remember them all before the interview, they have their own regulations for how long you needed to have resided in the state and how long you've been voting overseas or absent overseas to be able to vote in those elections.
Got it. So do check out, as Bill mentioned, fvap.gov if you are a U.S. citizen living overseas. Make sure that you follow the correct guidelines and protocols for your individual state. As you might have seen in the news lately, there are some primaries and caucuses that have already taken place. So you really want to pay close attention to the upcoming primary registration deadlines. You might have heard the term Super Tuesday in the news. That is coming up very soon. So if your state participates in one of the Super Tuesday primaries, you really want to check if that deadline has passed or not. And keep in mind that the general election will be taking place in November of this year. So you really want to make sure that you are registered in time to submit your ballot. Now, if someone is registered, they get their ballot, where do they drop it off?
So the U.S. Embassy is going to be announcing quite soon the opening of our ballot drop box. So you don't need to make an appointment, and you don't need to come all the way into the embassy in order to hand off your ballot into our drop box, and it'll be taken to our diplomatic pouch and securely and safely sent to the United States to be counted in your home state.
So every time I pass the U.S. Embassy, I see this large crowd of people waiting outside. Do I have to wait in that line to drop off my ballot?
No, you don't. So American citizens always can just proceed straight to the front of that same entrance where that big line of people is, and tell them that you're an American citizen. Tell them that you have your ballot prepared and sealed and ready to be dropped into the mail, and present that to the guards. The guards will put it into the drop box in front of you so you know that it's on its way to be counted and have your voice heard in the United States.
That makes sense. Thank you very much, Bill. Is there any other announcement or details you would like to share with the program about this program before we move on to other topics?
Well, not on federal voting assistance program, but I do want to put in a plug because not only are the elections around the corner, but we're very close to spring break. And I always want to plug, before our Jamaican friends that are listening in host American citizen friends or visitors from the United States, or if we have any US citizens thinking about travel to Jamaica soon, to register with step.gov. That's the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, step.gov. STEP is the way that the US State Department can know where our American citizens are staying and visiting in countries like Jamaica. And if there's any sort of emergency or crisis, it's through the STEP program that we first reach out to American citizens to give them emergency information, such as the location of shelters, where and how they can provide information to the embassy on what assistance they need, and how to access emergency services through our Jamaican host government partners.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And Bill, this does remind me that we do encourage travelers to Jamaica to purchase health insurance or travel insurance that covers them when they are on island, because it is advisable given the quality of healthcare institutions here. So if you are considering a spring break trip to Jamaica, just make sure that when you're scrolling through during that booking, that you do give some extra thought and consideration where it asks you, do you want to add travel insurance to your travel plans, take a look and see what that covers and what the cost may be. Oftentimes, this is the most cost-effective way to make sure that your health treatment is covered should anything transpire while you're traveling overseas. And we do find that this is something that many U.S. citizens traveling in Jamaica are very glad that they've taken advantage of. So please keep that in mind.
Purchase travel insurance and make sure that that travel insurance covers medical evacuation. Medical evacuation is frequently the highest cost of seeking medical treatment in Jamaica. I was amazed to find out that just a medical evacuation to South Florida can cost $20,000 to $30,000 for a single patient.
That's like a year of private college tuition.
Yeah, and not a lot of American citizens have $20,000 to $30,000 available in their bank accounts, ready to pay right away. And that's when the air ambulance is going to want to be paid before those engines start churning and the airplane takes off. So make sure that you have travel insurance that covers that medical evacuation to make sure that you're doing everything you can to stay safe while visiting here in Jamaica.
Thank you, Bill. I do want to remind folks, I'm going to do a little PSA here. Please take a look at some of the links that you can find at the bottom of the screen and also in the comments. You can find resources there to renew passports, to apply for CRIBA, to apply for visas, as well as to get different travel advisories and notifications related to Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and any health insurance information that you may need. I'm also going to remind folks that have joined late that today we're covering American Citizen Services, but next month on March 20th at 1 o'clock local time, we will be covering the J1 Exchange Visitor Visa Program. So if you're interested in that, please tune in to any of the available streaming channels to hear about the J1 Visa Program. Now, Bill, we do have some questions from the audience, so we're going to turn to that part in just a moment. I also want to remind anyone listening that you can post questions or comments on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we will try to address them during this Q&A section. Okay, so Bill, we do have Joan from X, formerly known as Twitter, asking about the CRIBA services. So Joan wants to know, can she apply for a CRIBA if the father is a green card holder?
So if neither parent is a U.S. citizen, then the child born to those parents would not qualify for a consular report of birth abroad. And the proper thing to look for would be the appropriate category of immigrant visa if the family is looking to move to the United States.
So take a look at the immigrant visa section, Joan, on the U.S. Embassy website. There's different derivative categories, as they're called. What does that mean? Derivative means in relation to the current immigrant visa holder. So the father with a green card would then petition for any number of derivatives. It could be the parents, it could be the children, it could be the spouse. And in your case, it would most likely be a petition for you, the spouse, and or the child. So take a look at that. There is a different wait time associated with different derivative categories, and those can also be found on the travel.state.gov website. So we have Carol asking if her child's CRIBA is denied, can she reapply?
So if the consular report of birth abroad is denied, it's typically for a very fundamental reason that the requirements under the law weren't met or weren't documented at the time of the original interview. These aren't lottery decisions. These aren't decisions that are made randomly. We try our hardest to make sure that every applicant has every opportunity to prove the requirements of the law, whether or not they qualify for the service like a consular report of birth abroad. That being said, there's no restriction under the law on applying again. We just really want to strongly encourage anyone considering applying again to look into the reason that their original application was denied and make sure they address the concerns that came up in that interview. If the problem was a lack of documentation on the citizenship of the parent that was transmitting their citizenship to the child, make sure that you can address and document that issue. If the issue is the biological relationship between the US citizen parent and the child, make sure that you have a way and a strategy to properly document that as well.
And we do want to make sure that applicants make prudent use of their limited time and financial resources. So as Bill said, the reason why it was denied is very important, right? So if there was a factual finding that in fact the child does not qualify to be a US citizen, it's very unlikely or difficult that that factual finding will be overcome. If there's no genetic relationship between the claimed US citizen father and the child, there's no amount of additional documentary evidence that may overcome that. But if it was a lack of supporting documentation and just there wasn't enough follow-up within the frame of time that the application was valid, of course you should reapply, because if you now have the documentary evidence, then it would be worthwhile for your time. So please don't just apply if you think that multiple attempts will somehow change the chances of the outcome. It's more, do you have the supporting evidence that will lead to issuance of the CRIBA? And in that case, please make sure that you pursue an application for your child. Now, we have Samuel from YouTube who is asking if the U.S. Embassy does anything for U.S. citizens who find themselves in medical emergencies while in Jamaica.
Fantastic question, and sadly a question that comes up much too often when American citizens are victims of road accidents, find themselves becoming ill while traveling here, or just have a pre-existing condition that gets worse over time. So the long and the short is we will provide American citizens with information about how to seek appropriate medical care, and we will provide them with how to navigate the process of working with either a private hospital and making the payments necessary there, or engaging with a public hospital in getting the care they need. But the embassy cannot and will not pay for the medical care or pay for medical evacuation. That's why that travel insurance that we talked about earlier is so very important. You need to have some way to pay for your medical treatment to either recover from whatever injury or illness you're suffering from, or be able to make that arrangement for a medical evacuation to get you home and get you to the care that you need.
And I do want to make a plea. We always think that travel insurance or medical evacuation is something that's reserved for the deathly ill or seriously ill individuals. But it's not just the elderly or seriously ill that find themselves needing medical evacuation or treatment here in Jamaica. Think about it. You're traveling to a Caribbean island where beach, fun, and sun is a main attraction to come to Jamaica. You might not think about it, but you might be hiking up a river. You might trip on a rock. You may go jumping into the sea. All kinds of accidents happen when active sports are involved or a change to a lifestyle occurs during your travels. So no matter how old you are, no matter how healthy you believe you are, make sure that you are covered medically when you travel to Jamaica, because otherwise the U.S. Embassy will not be able to financially support you should any incident transpire. Now, we will give you resources, as Bill mentioned, to the health institutions that are available, but they are very expensive, and we don't want to find U.S. citizens unable to pay for medical services that they desperately need. Bill, we have about 2 minutes left in today's session. Today will be a little bit shorter than some of our other Consular Conversations live, but I do want to make sure that a couple of remaining questions get answered. So first off, we have Shannon, who's asking a good question on Facebook. Can Shannon vote only at the embassy in Kingston, or can ballots also be dropped off at the consular agency in Montego Bay?
So two very important things to point out there. The first is you can't actually vote at the embassy. It's not like we have a voting booth and you come and fill out your ballot and turn it in then and there. You have to go to the Federal Voting Assistance Program, fvap.gov, and fill out the ballot through your home state, or through the emergency postcard ballot, seal it according to the instructions, and come drop it off. You can only do this at the embassy because we want to make sure that we move this as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And we have time for one final question from Erica on YouTube. Erica asks if she can complete her passport application in person if she doesn't have access to a computer.
Absolutely. If you don't have access to a computer, you can still make your appointment for a passport service, come into the embassy, and we'll help you fill out that application here in the comfort of our waiting room.
Thank you, Bill. Erica, just want to check with you. If you have your passport in front of you, take a look and see if it was issued within the last 15 years. If you're an adult and you have a passport that was issued in the last 15 years, you can go ahead and print out a passport application. I know you said you don't have a computer at home, but feel free to visit a library or an internet cafe. Feel free to print out that application and fill it out and mail it to the U.S. Embassy. We're always happy to accommodate anyone with assistance with the passport applications if they need, but we also want to be respectful of your time. So if you don't need to come into the U.S. Embassy, we don't want to use more of your time than necessary and devote time to the applicants who need to be present at the U.S. Embassy. So take a look. If your passport was issued in the last 15 years, print out what's called a DS-82 passport application form and go ahead and follow the instructions on mailing that in with your existing valid or expired passport. And we'll be sure to adjudicate your application accordingly. So, Bill, I just want to give you a huge thanks for joining us today. We learned a lot about general American citizen services, the extremely short wait times that are available now for a variety of both American citizen and visa services at the U.S. Embassy, and most importantly, how to prepare for the upcoming federal election in 2024. So thank you again, Bill.
Thank you so much for having me once again. And one last plug: to stay safe in Jamaica and make sure that your travel in anywhere around the world is safe and secure, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, step.gov.
Thank you. Folks, remember you can join us next month, March 20th at 1 o'clock local time. Following us on Twitter, now known as X, Facebook, and YouTube at US Embassy JA, and we'll be talking about the J1 Exchange Visitor Program. We are looking forward to seeing you soon. Until next time.